Okay, so today we were doing a deep dive into a pretty sensitive topic,
Yeah.
the Taiwan Strait.
Mm-hmm.
Tensions are as high as ever.
Yeah.
We had those Chinese military maneuvers on Valentine's Day,
Right.
February 14th, so just a couple days ago.
Yep.
Warships, Coast Guard vessels,
Mm-hmm.
and a whole lot of warplanes, like a seriously concerning amount, 41 to be exact.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess today our deep dive is, like, why is everyone so freaked out about this?
Right.
What does it actually mean for Taiwan? And where to go from here?
Well, I think, the Taiwan Strait has always been kind of a flashpoint, right?
Yeah.
But what we saw on February 14th, I mean, that's a pretty clear sign that things are escalating.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned flashpoint.
Right.
But I feel like it's one of those things where it's been simmering for so long
Right.
that it's almost easy to just tune it out,
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, China, Taiwan, they're always kind of at odds.
Mm-hmm.
But this feels different. Yeah. So one thing I don't fully get, like, there's all this talk about the median line in the Taiwan Strait.
Mm-hmm.
Is that like an actual border?
No, not officially, but it's been this kind of like unspoken understanding,
Okay.
Kind of like a buffer zone.
Okay.
And the fact that 28 Chinese aircraft crossed it, like that's a big deal. It's a
Yeah.
huge departure from how things used to be.
So it's not just like, oh, they flew kind of close.
Yeah.
This is like a real, we're pushing the boundaries kind of thing.
Exactly.
And what were those planes actually doing? The sources mentioned simulated attacks.
Yeah, so we're talking like full-on practice runs.
Okay.
They simulated air and naval attacks, basically testing out how Taiwan would defend itself.
Right.
They even practiced blockades, like cutting Taiwan off from the rest of the world.
Jeez.
And some reports even suggest they simulated amphibious landings.
Like a full-on invasion.
Yeah.
So how did Taiwan react to all of that? I mean, I'd be freaking out, honestly.
Yeah. Well, they're in a tough spot, right? They monitored everything very closely, obviously.
Right.
But they didn't actually engage in any kind of military response.
So, like, trying not to escalate things.
Exactly. A very strategic move. Don't want to poke the bear, so to speak.
Yeah, but China seems pretty intent on poking.
Well, I mean, you have to see it from their perspective, too.
Right.
They see Taiwan as a breakaway province that needs to be reunited with the mainland eventually. So these maneuvers, from their point of view, they're just asserting their claim, making sure Taiwan doesn't get any funny ideas about independence.
Right. And it's not just Taiwan and China who are watching all of this unfold.
Right, and absolutely not. The whole world is watching. And a lot of countries are pretty worried.
Yeah.
Especially the U.S. and their allies. They see this whole thing as a major threat to regional stability,
Yeah.
They've made it very clear they'll support Taiwan's right to defend itself.
Okay.
So it's a very tense situation.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not just about military stuff, right? I mean, we've talked about the warplanes and everything.
Right.
But there's more to it.
Oh, yeah, way more.
Like, what else is China doing to kind of, I don't know, squeeze Taiwan?
Well, they're playing the long game.
Okay.
They're using diplomacy and economic pressure, trying to isolate Taiwan on the world stage.
So, like, what? Like, not inviting them to parties?
Kinda, but more like pressuring other countries to cut ties with Taiwan
Okay.
and recognize Beijing instead.
So they're like, if you're friends with Taiwan, you're not friends with us.
Basically. Like, look at what happened with South Africa.
Could.
China basically forced them to relocate Taiwan's embassy out of their capital.
Wow.
That's just one example, but it shows how far China is willing to go.
Yeah, that's pretty intense. So where does this all leave Taiwan?
Honestly, in a really, really tough spot.
Right.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place, basically.
Yeah, it kind of feels like that.
They're trying to maintain their independence. While this giant superpower is breathing down their neck,
Yeah.
it's a situation that could explode at any moment.
It's kind of terrifying, honestly.
Yeah.
So I guess for people listening, trying to wrap their heads around all of this,
Right.
what are the key things they should be thinking about?
Well, first off, this is a huge deal.
Yeah.
China is showing that they're serious about Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
These military maneuvers are a massive escalation,
Okay.
and it's spooked the entire world.
Yeah.
Second, this isn't just about military force.
Right.
China's playing a much bigger game, using diplomacy, economics, you name it,
Okay.
to isolate Taiwan and bring them back under their control.
Yeah.
And finally, Taiwan is in a really, really difficult position.
Yeah.
They're trying to defend themselves, but they're also trying not to provoke China.
Right.
It's a balancing act, and one wrong move could have disastrous consequences.
Yeah. So as we kind of wrap things up here, what's like the big question that people should be asking themselves as they follow this story?
I think the big question is, how can Taiwan survive this?
Right.
Like, given how aggressive China's becoming,
Yeah.
what options does Taiwan realistically have to protect its future?
Right, because they can't just, like, surrender.
Right.
Right.
No, definitely not. But fighting back directly, that's incredibly risky, too.
Yeah. No easy answers. Well, that's about all the time we have for today.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Of course.
We'll be back soon with more fascinating and maybe slightly less terrifying topics.
Hopefully.
Until then, stay informed, stay curious,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll see you next time.
Kira.